So what's really incredible about, what you're going to learn about today with Medical Brigades and just, overall what our organization does is that we're actually, as an organization, and really including all of you to be a part of it in some capacity and however you'd like to be a part of it, is that we do hit all 5 of those pillars on a very direct level, right? So we had this incredible conversation with, the admissions group that are just like applying, that are just getting students to review their medical school applications. And, we had somebody on their panel reach out to Global Brigades a while back and said, hey, can you tell us a little bit about the organization? Because there were so many really remarkable students that had gone through our programs and they wanted to learn a little bit more about, how we got started. And what was really incredible about all that is that, it was really primarily driven by students. Just like many of you that are here, you guys are spending your Saturday here because you care about where you want to go, right? You care about how you can develop that path into whatever goal you have, whether it's to be an MD, a DO, I heard, nurse practitioner, PA, whatever you have kind of planned for yourself, is that you're driven, right? You want to do things to really set yourself apart. And then also in some conversations that I had with individuals here, is that what really stood out to me is that you guys are all really motivated to kind of do whatever it takes to really be, exposed to as much as you can so you can take that into your professional career, right? And that was a lot of our story at Global Brigades. Whoops, one here. Okay, so I want to ask you guys a question. What does volunteering mean to you particularly? And, there's no wrong answers, but when you think about, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about volunteering, whether it's in the context of, what your major is or what Dr. Mehta talked about, what does volunteering mean to you? Yeah. Yep, serving and helping your community. Exactly. That's a great one. What else? Yes. Yes, having empathy and solidarity. Excellent, excellent. Yep. Humility. Yep. Very much so. Yes. Non-for-profit. Non-for-profit. Yep. What else? Think about, what it means to you as you learned a lot about, trying to get into medical school and just the process of the journey that you're on, here on campus and as you move on to the next phases. What does that mean to you in terms of volunteering? Yep.
I guess connecting with people that might be different from you, so getting experience and being able to understand other people's perspectives and helping people that might be different from you.
Exactly. It's really kind of having more perspective, right? The more that you're exposed to, the more that you do, right? The more that you get out there and talk to people or, get involved in different things that may or may be out of your comfort zone, that exactly is correct, right? It kind of brings you into a different perspective of life. It brings you a different perspective as to what you plan on doing. So I want to talk a little bit about how we started. And I love telling this story because obviously it's very personal to me, but I love telling this story because it is so relatable to all of you that are here today in terms of really thinking outside of the box, thinking about, taking those opportunities to another level, even if it feels intimidating, even if it feels, maybe out of your comfort zone, right? So I was at Marquette University and I was in a physical therapy track at the university, and it was a 6-year program, right? So you kind of go through undergrad, you go through graduate school. I elected to also do a PhD on top of that. And so, I was going to be in school for a really long time. And something that I personally really wanted to do in my career was to study abroad. I wanted to, kind of go to a different country, meet new people, learn about different cultures, and be able to kind of take, that college experience, right? Kind of take that bull by the horns and go somewhere else and see what it's like. So I was pretty upset when I found out when I talked to my college counselor that you can do that, but you won't be able to continue with the program because it doesn't really allow you to take that time off, take a semester off, and that's something to consider. So, I was pretty bummed about that, and I was kind of lamenting about, well, what can I do to at least scratch that itch a little bit, right? So I had a really good friend that was in a lot of my classes, and I was kind of really just sharing my personal thoughts, like, I'm really bummed. This is something I personally really wanted to do. It's not really in my cards, or kind of lose my seat, in my program, and it delays, a few things, which is okay. But in that mindset, it wasn't something that I was capable to kind of take a break from. And, he said, Well, there's a group of doctors. He's from Indianapolis. He's like, there's a group of doctors back home from Indianapolis that do these kind of medical trips where, they go to rural areas in various parts of the world, specifically Honduras. And they actually go and they connect with a local organization on the ground, and they provide medical treatment to areas of the world that basically have zero medical access, right? Has zero access to healthcare. So he said, why don't you get in touch with him? Maybe you can jump on a trip with him, right? So fast forward a couple of months, I had great conversations with the doctor. His name is Dr. Stevens. And he said, yeah, why don't you come along? And, we just go over spring break. It's just a 5 to 6 day, trip. And at least, come along and you can kind of see what this is about. And also, he said, we could use some extra help. We can use people that speak Spanish because we're going to a Spanish-speaking country. We could use people, to kind of help with carrying all the luggage and medication. We thought we can use some, manpower here and some women power to be able to go do this medical brigade. So I recruited about 15 or 16 other pre-med, pre-health students at Marquette. And, shortly thereafter, we boarded a plane to Honduras and we were about to go on our very first medical brigade. And so, when we went on this, we thought, okay, this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to be behind the scenes. We're going to be carrying all this medication and luggage, right? Where some of us that spoke Spanish, we were going to translate for some of the non-Spanish speaking physicians, really just kind of be behind the scenes and not really doing too much on the ground, but just be able to see what it's like to be in a different country and see what healthcare is like in a different country. So that definitely happened. But what else happened was that was a completely transformational, it was just 7 days, but it was a completely transformational experience for myself and the 15 other students and really everybody that was on that trip. Because what we were able to do was we were able to see all the things that we had intended to see, right? Like how healthcare works in a different country, especially a country that's under-resourced. We were able to, shadow physicians and be able to practice our Spanish and our medical Spanish. We were able to, certainly set up a little mobile medical clinic, which we'll see in a little bit, and really support. And we saw about, 1,000 patients that week. And it wasn't about the number. What was truly remarkable about that week was that as undergraduate students and as individuals that really had no, full training, we were able to see that we can make an impact as young individuals on a community in rural Honduras, right? And we were working alongside with local professionals. We were working alongside with the local organizations that were supporting this. But we came back and we said, this is incredible, right? There is so much need in these communities. And, just to paint the picture of some of these communities, how many of you have been to Honduras or Central America or, the rural areas of the developing world? Yeah, so why don't you tell me a little bit about what you kind of picture, or how you can describe that area as compared to here?
So it's definitely a lot more undeveloped and everything. The streets and the housing is, of course, not as developed as what we picture houses and everything. Because I went on a Dominican Republic trip back in spring of 2022 with a different organization. We were down there for the same amount of time.
Yep.
7 days, and we went to 4 different communities within the area, and it was a little eye-opening on how it may not seem like we have it as good here compared to say if you're an upper class or anything of the sort, but it's definitely if you were to be in their position, we would seem like upper class, having all the commodities we do have.
Exactly.
And easy access to healthcare, of course.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. Any other experiences that anybody wants to share? Great. So when we're talking about some of these communities, right? Like when we're sick, right? Let's say you are feeling uncomfortable, right? And you're like, okay, I'm just going to go to the local urgent care, or I'm going to go see my physician if he's nearby, or I'm going to go to the university health system, and see a nurse there, and maybe I can get treatment, right? When we're talking about some of these communities, right, in that first community that we went to, and those first, few years of when we were working as students, we're talking about communities that have basically slim to zero access to healthcare. So if you are sick, that's kind of it. Right? If you are sick, you hopefully have a little bit of savings to be able to take a bus to a city or to a village that has a clinic, right? But that is a very privileged thing in the areas that we were exposed to. And then you can get to the clinic, but do you have the funds to be able to purchase the medication or to pay for the treatment that you would need, right? So that's the type of areas that we're talking about here is, that very first trip is that we saw just the lack of healthcare, right? But what was also remarkable was just the incredible amount of potential and the incredible amount of drive that community members had to be able to really kind of take these opportunities to another level where if they just had some additional resources or they just have some additional support, that they can, bring some more opportunities to their families, like access to healthcare, right? So we came back from that 7-day trip, and typically we were probably thinking we'd go back to class and go back to our normal lives back in the U.S., right, and go back to studying for midterms and go back to doing everything. But what really happened was that we came back to campus completely bubbling with energy, in that we we saw a lot of how the other percentage of people live in the world, and we couldn't just turn our backs and say, hey, we're going to go back to what we're doing, but how do we really, at some level, in some capacity, kind of decrease that disparity between the opportunities that we have and the resources that we have here versus the lack of resources that are in a country such as Honduras, right? So we kind of took a leap of faith. We came back to campus and we tried to look for organizations. This was back in 2003. We tried to look for organizations that really focused on undergraduates being able to be a part of something like this, or create an organization, or had an organization that was created to be able to expose and really make impact on a very large level. But back in 2003, there was Doctors Without Borders, but you had to be a licensed professional, right, to be able to participate in that organization. So they do incredible work, but as undergrads, it's really hard to get involved on a deeper level, right? And then there was Peace Corps, but Peace Corps, you had to dedicate 2 years of time to be able to live in that country and make that sort of impact. So we thought, okay, well, there isn't anything out there. We took a really massive leap of faith, and we decided to create our very own organization that focused on students and undergraduate students really having this opportunity, leading this opportunity, and bringing access to healthcare and bringing exposure and shadowing opportunities, but also making true impact within these communities over time, right? And so that was really how we started as Global Brigades. So we went with one university. We had Marquette University, our group of 15 to 20 students, right? And then somebody from that university had a sister that went to University of Michigan. And she said, oh my gosh, this experience seems incredible. Not only are you getting the exposure of shadowing and, and using your medical Spanish and all these incredible things, but you're also making tremendous long-lasting impact in these communities, through working with the patients and working with the local organizations. So she said, why don't I start a chapter at University of Michigan? So we really didn't have a lot of infrastructure in the first, couple months. So we said, sure, go ahead. And so we gave her all of the information to how, to start the chapter there. They went to Honduras, went on a brigade, and then somebody from that group had a friend that went to University of Southern California, and same thing. This is kind of right when Facebook started, so people were, posting their opportunities and experiences or pictures online, and so, you can kind of see the viral kind of spread that happened where, oh, I want to do this, right? And so all of a sudden, within, a year later, we had over 80 universities contacting us, being able to want to start something like this on their campus. And so, we obviously grew really fast. We were, in between classes, in between lectures, in between studying for finals and midterms and answering emails from various students that were wanting to start a chapter on their campus. We were, in between visiting different campuses like this, just being able to come and speak to individuals that were really excited, and all just on our own time. We were just so driven to bring this experience and bring the impact, right? Not only the experience of the students, but the true impact that we're making in the rural areas that are completely under-resourced, right? We really wanted to kind of bring those two things together and spread the word as much as we could. So, so as we were, growing, we had over, 80 chapters in 2005. We started to see that we were doing these medical brigades, okay? So what a medical brigade is, and we're gonna show a short little video of it, is that we're really just setting up a mobile medical clinic at a local school or a local church and being able to see patients on a consistent basis with local Honduran physicians, with physicians that came on with the students from wherever their hometown was. They bring medication. We're actually seeing patients and distributing medications, sometimes doing very, very basic procedures if that's something that could be done on site. But we're really just having people be seen for sicknesses that they have, very similar things. And what we started to see is as we were doing more and more medical brigades and we're going to the communities over and over again, right? We thought, okay, this is great, right? We're actually bringing access, to medicine and physicians and healthcare into these communities and people are being seen. But, we started to see that some of the same illnesses kept popping up. So can you guys take a guess as to maybe what type of illnesses people were maybe coming into the clinic with or into the mobile clinic with? Yep. Chickenpox, yep. What else? Yes. Malaria, yep, exactly. Yes. Dysentery, yeah, that was a huge one. I mean, everybody, I would say like 90% of the patients that would come in a medical brigade would have that. Yes.
I imagine anything that requires a vaccine.
Yep.
That requires that would be treated with a vaccine.
Yep, that's right. Yes.
I actually worked in Costa Rica and we saw a lot of patients with scabies.
With scabies? Yes, yep, that's very common. Exactly. So let's take the example of dysentery, right? I said almost like 90% of the patients that would come through the medical brigade would complain of really painful diarrhea and dysentery and all these different things that were happening because of what do you think would be the root cause of that? In an area that's pretty rural, that doesn't have a lot of resources, the government's kind of forgotten about. Water, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. So we started to see, well, okay, if 90% of the people at the clinic, right, are coming through the medical brigade, are, having issues because of water. Well, that's great that we're giving them, medication to treat them for the 3 month, right, for the 3 months that they have that dysentery and, the various different symptoms that come with poor water. But what if we actually address the water issue within the community, right? So that's a lot of what Dr. Mehta was talking about is, part of, medicine and part of all of this is very fun because you have to think about the different ways to address that issue, right? And this is a very rudimentary, really rural situation where there isn't a lot of resources, right? We're not getting a lot of funding from, these communities are not getting a lot of funding from the government, if at all any, right? They're kind of up in the mountains. It takes 4 hours to get there. Half the communities are forgotten about or they don't even know that, people live there, right? These are really, really rural areas. And so we thought, okay, well, this is great. We're doing medical work, but let's actually look at the root of the problem. And that's where we started our Water Brigades program. And the Water Brigades program essentially was really focused on figuring out what the water issue was. I mean, this is a very simple explanation. It's a lot more detailed than that, but figuring out what the water issue is within the community and seeing if we can address it, right? So in one community, the community's name is Nakaome, we saw, okay, 90% of the people are coming in with waterborne illnesses. So let's go ahead and have a group of students work with local engineers and whoever, all the different experts, to be able to address the water issue. And where a community like Nakaome was drinking really contaminated water, and now we fixed the water issue over time, and now they have clean drinking water. We went back and did a medical brigade there, and like barely anybody had issues, had any sort of waterborne dysentery issues within that community. So we're like, okay, we're onto something, right? We have to go to the root of the problem, just like everything that we think about when we think about medicine, right? A lot of community members would come in with upper respiratory illnesses because a lot of times that their cooking that they're doing in their homes, most of these homes are adobe huts. They're cooking open fire within their homes and they're really breathing in that thick smoke. Think about like if you're at a bonfire, right? But if you're in a bonfire in a closed room, that air quality is probably not very good, right? And if you do that every single day, people were coming in with asthma and all these other, other respiratory issues. And we thought, okay, well, this is obviously a public health issue, right? So we sat down with community members and we sat down with local experts and said, how can we support this issue, right? And so we helped develop the concept of an eco stove, right? So the eco stove essentially is you still cook in the home, but there is a proper ventilation system so that that smoke doesn't really infiltrate the home and people are breathing that thick, dangerous smoke in every day. But, it's ventilating outside of the home, and same thing, whoosh, right? We started to see that all of these patients that were coming into the medical brigade with upper respiratory illnesses and all sorts of complaints when it came to breathing and things like that were significantly decreased, right? And so that really was what we were thinking about is, okay, well, now we're bringing some access to healthcare within these communities, right? Through the medical brigades and through medical programs. We're addressing the water issues within the community, right? Through water brigades and being able to have experts and students really focusing on addressing how to bring clean drinking water within the community. We're also addressing some of the public health issues, right? The stove is one example, building a latrine, right? That was at one of our other public health projects, right? Building latrines so that there is an open defecation that creates all sorts of illnesses and sicknesses, right? That there's a proper way to dispose of human waste. That is another issue that was addressed, right? And so what we started to see is that as we were doing this over years, right, and we have more and more chapters that are coming down and really making that impact, even if they're just coming down for 7 days, but we have all these universities working together with local experts and coming down and addressing these issues, we started to see that we go back to a community in which we were there maybe a year ago. They've had multiple brigades happening, water, public health, medical brigades. We go back to that community a year later and people are healthier, they're happier, the kids are, have way more energy, right? Because they're just feeling much better about themselves and their health and things like that. Men who are typically farmers are not taking time off of work because they're feeling much better and not sick all the time. And so there's more, income coming to the home. So we started to see that, wow, we're really supporting undergraduate students, right? We are all working together and really supporting the fact that we're breaking the cycle of poverty within these communities, right? Kind of one brigade and one program at a time. And so that's where we really developed out our holistic model, right? So what we realized is that when we have sustainable health systems, right, medical brigades, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other programs that we have, when we talk about water and sanitation, right, public health and water related approaches within the community. And then one of the major things that we also realized through many conversations with community leaders, and I think, that's really important to understand, is that we never ever wanted to be like a type of organization that said, hey, we're a bunch of Americans, we're going to go to rural Honduras and we're going to say, this is how you live and this is how you do your healthcare and this is how you do your water. No, everything was, and also kind of the beauty of the natural kind of mindset of that is that all of us being students at the time, we weren't the experts, and that's okay, right? You learn as you go, but we weren't the experts, right? And what we really relied on was working alongside with the community members and empowering the community members to be able to share their voice on what they wanted to see their community to be, right? So the analogy that I kind of use at Global Brigades is like, all of us are kind of on the bottom and we're pushing the community leaders up to be able to be advocates, right, for their own rights, their own health, right, their own development. And we wanted to have the community members to be able to feel comfortable having a voice. When I kind of talked about this, when we're talking about the rural areas in which we work in, many of these areas are either forgotten by the government or, they may not be a priority for the government. And so they are not comfortable or used to being asked what their opinions are or what their thoughts are or what their vision is, right, in terms of like their generations and their grandkids and what type of environment they want to be raised in. And so after many conversations, we also realized that there was kind of one other area in order to truly break the cycle of poverty within these communities, and that was bringing access to capital within these communities. And that's just a fancy way to say that if they had access to, savings and loans and to be able to have a place where they can safely put their money and safely take out a loan if there was an emergency or if they wanted to grow their business, that there was some infrastructure to do that, right? And so when we put all of those three things together, we really realized, and through a ton of research and evaluation over the years, is that we are breaking the cycle of poverty within these communities and allowing these community members to thrive and live above that poverty line and allow a future for their kids and their grandkids to not be living in that situation where, every day is survival, right? And every day is just kind of one of those things where, well, hopefully I don't get sick because I don't have a way to address that, right? Or hopefully, this happens, so, or hopefully this doesn't happen, so then X, doesn't happen, right? So our holistic model is really focused on bringing those areas together and really focusing on breaking the cycle of poverty and allowing the community leaders to really kind of take that charge themselves. So it all, as I remember, I just want you to recognize that it started out with just a group of students, right? We were just 20 years ago, undergraduate students that, wanted to do something a little bit different, had this incredible opportunity and transformational experience. And that was the foundation of our Medical Brigades program and a lot of the other programs that I've already shared, right? And so we also thought about how do we expand this, right? And a lot of it was through talking to other students that were in the same mindset, that really wanted to grow this opportunity and really understand that, right? There's a difference between, going into a community for 7 days and saying like, okay, I feel great about this. This was good. But then, what is the sustainability in that, right? Like, what is it? Are we putting a Band-Aid on this community, or are we actually addressing the issues within the community, right? And that's where we kind of go beyond a lot of just the basic medical relief in terms of, medical brigades and just providing medication. But we were able to develop all these other programs that really support the health of that community, right? When we talk about public health issues and water issues, that's really fundamentally affecting the health of that community, right? And even the economic development side of things. So we are in 5 countries right now, actually close to 6. We're launching a new country very soon in Belize, but we are in Guatemala and Honduras and Panama in Central America. We're also in Ghana and West Africa, and then we work with the refugee population in Greece. So we've been able to, we started off again, 20 years ago in Honduras, and we've expanded to other countries over time, and something that's a pretty broad statement, but it's important to note, is that every country has a different culture, right? Even looking at, Central America versus West Africa, totally different language, right? Totally different everything, right? But a lot of this, when you're talking about rural development work and you're talking about, really making an impact on the rural areas, a lot of those challenges and a lot of those things are pretty fundamentally the same, right? And we just kind of have to really make sure we understand the culture and, again, lead from behind, right? Let the community members lead and be able to provide those resources together. And then, working with the refugee population in Greece has been really incredibly amazing. There's people that have been displaced from their home countries and starting from scratch without anything, right? And so a lot of our programs really focus on building that confidence back up and really building that capacity back up while also addressing those basic needs. So this is just a bunch of numbers, but just kind of showing how much we've grown over the many years. We're in almost 6 countries now. We've had close to over 300 partner communities, and it's important that you note that we call them partner communities because, we work alongside with the community leaders. All the students work alongside with the community leaders, and our teams on the ground work alongside with those leaders to really, work on those projects and programs that really bring all of the things that I shared earlier. And you can kind of just see that we're impacting a lot of people, almost, close to over 250,000 individuals that live in these countries have been impacted by our programs. And again, through the brigades that our undergraduate students or graduate students are doing, we're actually reaching that sort of scale because we're working together and really addressing what we want to do to be able to bring them to a better place in life. Okay, so I talked a lot. I know most of you are pre-med here, so I want to just talk a little bit about what a medical brigade looks like, right? And then also some of the other programs that are associated with our medical brigade that really support in the sustainability of everything that we're doing. So typically, these communities that we're working in whichever country that we're talking about, they're typically about, several hours away, an hour or 2 away from the capital cities. In Honduras, particularly, in Panama, they're kind of deep within, different off the main roads. And so, they're very under-resourced. Sometimes, the government may know about these communities, sometimes they may not, which is also part of the issue when it comes to lack of resources. There's a lot of leadership within these communities. So, again, kind of really focusing on supporting the leaders within the community. There's a lot of leadership, but when there's no resources, right, that's when things become hard. So with the medical brigade, what we're actually doing is pretty basic, right? We're recruiting students. We have local physicians, nurses, pharmacists, et cetera. These individuals are coming together and we're basically turning a school or a local church or whatever infrastructure that is available within the community as a full-blown clinic for the day or for several days within that time. So you can see, the first areas where people kind of line up. You can see on the bottom, the little orange areas where people line up. Usually there is a community leader or a community health worker, which we'll talk about in a second, that's there just writing the names down of everybody. So we actually take information from the individual so that we can track the data over time. The second area is triage. So that's where patients are actually going in and getting their height, their weight. If they're over a certain age, we're getting, students are taking their blood pressure alongside with, working alongside a nurse and really learning those skills there. They're taking, their temperature. They're learning a lot of those like very basic vital signs, but, getting the opportunity to practice those, right, alongside with the healthcare professional in the triage area. And then the patient then moves into the consultation area, and the consultation area is where they actually sit down with the doctor and they say, here are the things that are bothering me, or here's what I need to learn more about. And you are sitting next to the doctor, and sometimes if you speak Spanish, you can translate as well and practice your medical Spanish. If you do not speak Spanish, that's all right too. You can sit down with the doctor and there would be a translator provided, and you're actually going through the consultation process, right? So as one of the pillars, right, shadowing is huge. There's a tremendous amount of shadowing that's happening in addition to volunteering, right? That's happening in the really the entire brigade, and especially the consultation section. So the patient is then being seen by the physician, right? The physician then hopefully can come to some sort of a diagnosis or treatment plan. Then many times there is really zero, similar to medicine and things like that, there's zero access to dental care within the community. So there's an opportunity to have a dental area within the community brigade. And dental areas, people are pretty much just needing extractions, or they're needing some sort of fillings, right? They have painful teeth, they just need it out, right? It's a very simple thing that we're doing in dental brigades, but a tremendous amount of relief for the patient. And then the extra station is one of, I think, just if there's a student group that's really interested in optometry, right? You can fit people for glasses. If there's other specialties, we've had, being a physical therapist, there's been a lot of groups that do very basic physical therapy, teaching farmers how to properly lift with their legs instead of their back so they can, not injure themselves and not be out of work for a while. Simple things like that. And then the other area is number 8 and 6 there is the pharmacy. So one of the rooms actually gets transformed into a pharmacy where basically all of the common medicines that are needed within that community are able to be filled and distributed to that patient. So they actually get to leave with the medication that they need if they need medication, right? And then I think that this is one of the most important areas here. It's number 7 there, is the public health education area, right? So it's great that we're providing all this medication. It's great that we're providing all this intervention and treatment and consultation, right? But basic things in these communities, like you have to think about, majority of these community members have maybe had up to a 3rd or 4th level education or 4th grade education, right? So simple things like washing hands, or simple things like covering your mouth when you're sneezing, right? Or simple things like avoid these foods if you have hypertension, or simple things like, avoid this if you are pregnant. These are things that they have no access in terms of information, right? So the public health area is really doing workshops and conversations and discussions and little, kind of mini fun interactive lectures, especially with the kids, to be able to kind of give them that very basic education that could take their health from here, right, to a higher level of quality from there. So that's essentially how a medical brigade looks. So question for you guys, what are some of the things that you talked about, dysentery, malaria, what are some, diseases that you think are typically present in the areas that we talked about outside of, some of the things that you guys mentioned? Yes. Malnutrition. Yep. That's a big one. Yep. Yes. STDs. Yep. Yep. And that's where the public health education station is really important, right? To teach proper sexual health. That's huge. Yes.
Maybe hypertension.
Hypertension. Yep. That's a very, very common diagnosis that is happening there. And a lot of it is due to lifestyle or, lack of resources, right, in terms of the types of foods that they can diversify in terms of eating and things like that. Yep. Yes. Heat stroke. Yep. Some of these countries are extremely hot. Yep. What else? Great. So some of the things that you'll see on a brigade is something that you may never see here in the States, right? Or unless you're working at like an infectious disease or tropical disease clinic here. You're gonna see things like dengue fever, right? Which is a mosquito-borne illness that creates all sorts of side effects and that is very long. It's a very long process in terms of recovery, but some basic medication can really decrease the longevity of that illness. You're going to see you would see a ton of malaria, right? A lot of malaria programs in these countries don't exist because the government doesn't have funding. So being able to, being able to treat or see with a physician and have them treat malaria is a huge thing. You're going to see things like chikungunya, which is another very interesting tropical disease, right? You're going to see things like Zika, right? You're going to see things that over here, right? If you have let's say like a little wound, you clean it out, you put a Band-Aid on, put some Neosporin on, you're good, right? But when you're in a super rural area where none of those resources are there, you're going to see things that, what happens to patients, right, over time because they don't have direct intervention. They don't have direct ways to be able to address that. So you're going to see, a lot of things, unfortunately, a lot of things that have been long-winded, so there's a lot of things on the medical brigade that you'll say, I don't think I've ever seen kind of basic things on the medical brigade that don't have like a different twist, so if you're interested in that sort of aspect of international medicine or, infectious disease and things like that, that is definitely a large part of what you'll see on the brigade. So these are just a couple pictures like in the clinic, right? This is the middle picture is a typical public health education workshop. There's a lot of diagrams, there's a lot of dialogue within the community members. And you can kind of see that, this is a pretty rudimentary brigade. It's very bare bones. We're, using desks within the school as consultation desks. We're using some of the basic supplies, but the impact that's being made is huge, right? When you think about the type of impact that's being made, where healthcare did not exist within that community and they're even getting this basic intervention is massive. So there's a medical brigade, right? And then what happens after you leave the medical brigade, right? That's a big question that we get. So what is the actual long-term support, long-term solution? It's great that they're provided medication. It's great that they're provided that education. But what are some of the things that we do to really support that sustainability, right? And I know that word is kind of a buzzword, right? Everybody uses like, oh, it needs to be sustainable, or like this water bottle is sustainable, or like sustainable, right? What does that word mean to you? When you think about sustainable, why is that word so important and such a buzzword and such a, conversation piece when we're talking about that word in particular? Yeah. Exactly. Long lasting, what else? Yep.
Well, I guess unsustainable then it's effective and sufficient because we'll have to keep, it'll last. You'll have to keep.
Exactly. Yeah, long-lasting, effective, efficient, right? So what really sets global brigades and medical brigades apart from a lot of, there's so many organizations and they do tremendous amount of work. And I'm not saying this because I'm biased, right? But what really sets our organization apart, right? And we're in over 500, almost 600 universities. We have, sent over 100,000 students on this, volunteer experience. Part of the reason why, we are really considered like the gold standard when it comes to a really solid volunteer experience, but also making sustainable change and making high impact is because there's other programs that are associated with the medical program that really address that long-term sustainability, right? That long-term efficiency, that long-term effect where it's not just, treating that patient for that one day, but it's, really affecting them for generations to come. And I think that, again, that's been a big conversation when it comes to student-led volunteering is it sustainable, right? Are we making an impact? Are we just feeling good about ourselves, right? Are we actually doing something for the community? Are we doing, something a little bit more than that? And, it's all good, right? Everything, if we have good intention and we're volunteering and we're working with organizations that really have, a good reputation for that type of work, by all means, right? But what really sets Global Medical Brigades apart is that we have these other opportunities and these other resources so that if a medical brigade is not that first answer for a patient to receive whatever they need, that there are other ways that they can get to what they need, right? So the biggest program that we have within our medical program is our community health entrepreneurs. So we're a group of students, right? We come in, we do a medical brigade, we're seeing all these patients, they get the medication, but then what, right? What if somebody forgets their dosage, right? Or somebody has a weird reaction to the medication, right? That has a very common thing that happens. Every community is trained to have a community health entrepreneur, which is essentially a group of mostly women. There are a few men, but mostly women because they're at home and there's a lot of leadership opportunities for women within the communities, where they're trained. It takes them about 1.5 years to go through the program. They're actually trained to basically be like a local nurse of that community, so that when the medical brigade isn't there and something happens or somebody needs something within the community, there's a trained community health entrepreneur that's kind of powered by Global Brigades. They've been trained from, they're basically going through a lot of like nursing courses type of things, if you can imagine. They're learning about over-the-counter medication. They're learning first aid. They're learning a tremendous amount about prenatal and postpartum health, which is a very, big thing within these communities. So they're actually, a line of healthcare supporters within the communities, so that that's kind of the sustainable piece there. We also have urban clinics. We have two in Honduras. We have one in Greece. These urban clinics are clinics that are actually run within the urban areas. In Honduras, for example, we have 2 urban clinics in the capital, where it's very low cost opportunities where people can go to the urban clinic and get whatever additional treatment or additional procedures that they need to done that maybe can't be done on a medical brigade at the urban clinic. The patient referral program is also an incredible program. So the patient referral program is oftentimes there are situations in which a person will come to the medical brigade, right, and they will be diagnosed with something, but they can't be treated, right? So one example is we had a patient just a few weeks ago. Her name is Laura in Honduras, and she was complaining of a tremendous amount of abdominal pain. And after a pelvic exam and some basic consultation by the physician and the shadowing students, they realized, okay, it's probably something like an ovarian cyst, but we don't have any of the technology to be able to confirm that, right? So Laura was inserted into the patient referral program. She was then provided funding to be able to be driven to our urban clinics, where we have an ultrasound machine. She received her ultrasound. It did, in fact, confirm that she had these cysts. They were able to provide treatment to her, and now she actually just is happy, she's healthy, she's out of pain, and these are basic things that our patient referral program does fund and also sees the patient through, right? So we don't have that situation in which all the time in which, sorry, we can't help you on the medical brigade, good luck, right? We actually want to think about the sustainability, and we want to think about, what we can do outside of the typical brigade to support. And then also the last 2 things kind of go hand in hand, is that we have a full entire monitoring and evaluation team that's actually collecting data, that's researching the best interventions. And then we actually aggregate that data. And for those of you that are, really interested in that information, the Panama research opportunity that Dr. Mehta talked about is a huge opportunity to kind of exercise that part of your brain. But we have an entire team that's actually really taking a look at, okay, this is great, the work that we're doing. It's really good, but is it actually proven to work within the community? Is it actually proven to help that community? So that's also a huge part of it. And so we talked a lot about these things, right? There's so many, you're meeting all the pillars with our medical brigades program. You're also able to practice a lot of your international speaking, your language skills when it comes to medical language. And then also, shadowing, volunteering, all those things, right? The clinical hours are there. But then also the soft skills that are things that you can't, necessarily read in a textbook and things like that, right? Dr. Mehta talked about really knowing your personality to really understand what path you want to take, whether you want to be a pathologist or whether you want to be a gynecologist or what have you, right? A lot of this experience really helps you shape to think about, right? It helps you kind of get yourself in the mindset of like, what kind of healthcare professional do I want to be, right? What kind of person do I want to be within my, career scope, but also as an individual, right? A part of being a physician and being a healthcare professional is also feeling really excited and confident about what you plan to do, right? And a lot of this experience will help you kind of understand, or at least start the process of thinking in that direction. So just to wrap up here, there's, I hope this was really helpful, and there's a couple things that you guys can do to get involved. So we actually, in a month from now, we have a Global Brigades student leadership conference happening here in Austin, kind of ironically at the same, same area. So I hope all of you guys can make it. Bring your roommates, bring your friends, bring whoever is interested, other pre-med students, other healthcare, health-focused students that want to start a medical brigade or join a medical brigade. Brigade. This is such a tremendous opportunity. I would say 99% of the people that have participated in Global Brigade's program just had incredible experiences and also have a lot to share when it comes to their personal statements and when it comes to, setting themselves apart as individuals, especially if you're applying to medical school or other professional opportunities. And then you get to also learn about some of the other programs that also feed into the health aspect of things. So you can just scan that, and we hope to see you guys there, and just bring whoever. This is an open opportunity, open invitation to learn and talk a little bit more about what I brought up today. Also, this is another free event. This is going to be super awesome. So one of our team members, Madison Schweitzer, we're going to do a bonus pre-med experience. So she'll be actually zooming in. It's a virtual event, zooming in from Panama and talking a lot more in depth of what I brought up today, right? You're going to actually be able to see a community, meet community leaders. You're going to learn a little bit about the geography of the community and how that relates to the health system. You're going to be able to understand environmental issues and other components that really feed into why health is limited or how our access to healthcare is limited within these areas. And then also there's a lot of cultural opportunities as well to really understand the culture and kind of the fabric of that community, which goes into a lot of this international volunteer experience. So register for that. It's gonna be a really cool event. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern, so it could be after your classes. So that one is gonna be awesome, and you'll have a lot of questions answered and be able to also see a snapshot of what I've described over the last few minutes here. And then Dr. Myth also talked about this, the Panama research opportunity. This, research, I believe, is one of the, main pillars, and there's, a suggested amount of hours that are required for med school applicants. So this certainly fulfills a lot of that. This is a very in-depth opportunity. We're going to have programs in January, March, and June of next year, and this is specifically in Panama. If you scan the QR code, there's a tremendous amount of detail, but you're actually going in using modern research tools and actually doing a research exercise focusing on the efficacy of our community health entrepreneurs within these communities. So you're really learning about the sustainability, you're learning about the opportunities that are there and how our programs are hopefully impacting these communities. And then that you'll work together with your cohort and essentially write up a research paper, and that will be submitted to prominent journals for possible publication too. So, and you'd be all affiliated if you're joining on this research program as contributors to that research as well. And then also getting very immersed in the medical clinics, being able to experience the culture of Panama and all of the other things that I talked about in terms of what really kind of creates the system within the country. So again, this will fulfill a lot of your research hours. I've personally done a program like this within Global Brigades a few years back, and it was really remarkable. And what all the things that were learned out of that program were just things that I take on a daily basis as well. So really consider that, and there's more information on that. So I think that's it. Any questions? Yes. Yep. So they can happen anytime during the year. Most common is summer, spring break, winter break, when people actually have time off. But if you're not a chapter leader, if you are interested in joining a brigade, you can join a brigade. I highly encourage you to think about starting a chapter on your campus. We have all of the tools and resources necessary to take you through that process. It is not intimidating at all. We have everything set up for you. It's a great leadership opportunity, which is one of the pillars that Dr. Mitha talked about, right? So to answer your question, they're kind of year-round. It really depends on when you and your team wants to go. But I really highly consider it if the research opportunity or other things, start a chapter on campus. We take you through the entire process. We really support you in that entire process of recruiting and fundraising and booking your travel and all that fun stuff. And you get to exercise your leadership skills. So, and then you can kind of pick your time as to where you'd like, which country and when you'd like to go. Yes. Zero requirements. We just want people that are really pumped to make a tremendous impact internationally, that are interested in everything that I talked about. But yeah, you don't need to speak Spanish. You don't need to have any sort of requirements. Everyone's welcomed.
When exactly do people usually go?
When do they go?
Calendar event or
Yep. So if you're a chapter leader, you can set your own dates and kind of be based on that. Oftentimes, you can take a look. You can contact us on our website, and we have certain dates for open brigades that you can join. So it's really year round. Some universities have different spring breaks, so just kind of depends on that. Yep. Yes.
So if we're no longer a student during our gap years, can we participate?
Absolutely. Yep. You can contact us, and we can set you up with an existing group, or you can start your own chapter, and you can recruit other friends that are in similar positions as you. I highly recommend all of the things that I shared, but also starting a chapter is the best way as a leadership opportunity, and then you can also kind of create your own groups based on that on your campus or other gap year students that might be interested. Great. Any other questions? All right, well, I hope to see you guys in Honduras, Panama, Greece, Ghana, where have you. Thank you for listening, and I'll be around for the rest of the afternoon if you guys have any other questions.